The phone call arrived at exactly 8:15 on a dismal, rain-soaked Tuesday morning. I was standing inside the executive kitchenette on the 47th floor of Vanguard Apex Financial, quietly stirring a small drop of organic milk into my second cup of black coffee, when my mobile phone vibrated sharply against the cold granite counter. The screen displayed the name of my younger sister, Audrey. Audrey almost never called me during Eastern market trading hours unless something fundamentally catastrophic had occurred. A heavy, icy chill immediately settled in the pit of my stomach as I pressed the phone against my ear. "She is gone, Gerald," Audrey said softly, her voice wavering for a brief second before settling into a flat, numb emptiness. "Mom passed away about 20 minutes ago. The attending hospice nurse told me she simply closed her eyes, released a quiet breath, and drifted away. It was completely peaceful. I stood entirely motionless, watching the steam rise lazily from my ceramic mug. I carefully lowered the cup back onto the granite surface with slow, deliberate precision, as if placing it perfectly straight on the counter could somehow freeze time and undo the devastating words I had just heard. My mother was 78 years old, living in a peaceful assisted care community 2,200 miles away in rural Oregon. For the past 6 months, her gradually declining health had been a silent, constant ache in the background of my demanding life, but hearing the absolute finality of her departure paralyzed me where I stood. "Audrey," I managed to whisper, though my own voice sounded completely foreign, like that of a distant stranger speaking through a long, hollow pipe. "I am booking the very next flight out of Manhattan. I will be in Oregon before sunset. Just please make sure to hold off on any final decisions until I get there. I will take care of the initial paperwork with the local funeral home," Audrey replied softly, her breathing heavy across the line. "Just focus on getting here safely, Gerald. Take your time and drive carefully." I ended the call and leaned heavily against the kitchen counter edge, desperately trying to force oxygen back into my constricted chest. But before I could even process the weight of my grief, the frosted glass door swung open, and in walked Edgar Montgomery, our vice president of operations. Edgar was 55 years old, a silver-haired Wall Street veteran who had served as my unofficial mentor when I joined Vanguard Apex Financial 11 years ago. He took one look at my pale face and stopped dead in his tracks, his brow furrowing with deep professional concern. "Gerald, what on earth happened? You look as though you just stepped out of a trauma unit," Edgar asked, taking a step toward me. "My mother just passed away 20 minutes ago, Edgar," I said quietly, struggling to keep my breathing under control. "I need to clear my schedule and book an emergency cross-country flight right now." Edgar opened his mouth to offer his sincere condolences. But before he could speak a single word, my phone chimed loudly with an urgent text notification. It was a direct summons from Malcolm Thorne, the chief executive officer and founding managing partner of Vanguard Apex Financial. The message was characteristically brief and aggressive. "My office, right now. Do not delay." Edgar glanced down at my phone screen and let out a long, heavy sigh, his expression darkening noticeably. "You had better head straight into his office immediately. Malcolm has been on a complete rampage ever since the European market indices came in low this morning. He is looking for anyone to crush to relieve his personal frustration." I left my steaming coffee abandoned on the marble counter and walked down the wide, carpeted corridor toward the corner suite. At 48 years old, I had devoted 11 long years of my life to Vanguard Apex Financial as the lead quantitative strategist and senior managing director. I had personally engineered complex mathematical risk algorithms that generated tens of millions of dollars in clean net revenue for the institution, while I consistently sacrificed my weekends, my health, and precious moments with my loved ones. I was the dedicated executive who regularly remained at his desk until midnight stress, testing portfolio distributions, while younger, better-connected executives took corporate credit for my labor. Malcolm Thorne sat behind a massive, polished mahogany desk that offered an uninterrupted panoramic view of the Manhattan financial district. At 52 years old, Malcolm was a ruthless corporate ladder climber who evaluated human existence strictly through the cold lens of quarterly earnings reports. He did not even bother looking up from his tablet computer when I stepped through the double oak doors into his office. The primary investment delegation from Singapore is landing at 11 in the morning, Malcolm declared abruptly, his tone sharp, authoritative, and completely unyielding. Hiram Lin and his daughter Mei Lin are coming directly from JFK Airport to our central boardroom. We are pitching the finalized contractual terms for the $4,500,000 international acquisition deal. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing my mind to shift away from the mental image of my sister sitting alone in an Oregon hospice facility. Malcolm, that strategic pitch was explicitly scheduled for Thursday afternoon, I replied, maintaining a firm and measured composure. My mother passed away 20 minutes ago. I must catch an emergency flight to Oregon today to manage her estate and organize her funeral. Malcolm finally set his tablet down on the polished wood and fixed me with a cold, steel-gray stare. There was not a single flicker of human empathy in his eyes, only cold, calculated annoyance. "That is extremely unfortunate timing, Gerald," Malcolm said smoothly, leaning back into his leather armchair. However, Hiram Lin specifically demanded that the lead quantitative strategist who authored the underlying valuation model present the numbers in person. That is you. Bradley Owens cannot navigate those complex mathematical formulas without you standing right beside him. I can easily join the executive boardroom remotely from an airport lounge or deliver the presentation via an encrypted satellite video link, I countered, feeling a sudden pulse of anger beneath my composure. Or Bradley can walk them through the slides using my comprehensive technical brief. Hiram Lin is 78 years old and deeply traditional in his business philosophy, Malcolm interrupted, holding up his hand to cut me off without hesitation. He does not trust remote presentations, and he despises dealing with proxy representatives. He demands face-to-face accountability from the actual architect of the project. Take tomorrow off, Gerald. Once we sign the $4,500,000 acquisition agreement this afternoon, you may take your standard bereavement leave. But if you walk out of this building today and miss this presentation, do not bother returning. Your desk will be cleared and boxed before sunset. I stood inside the grand executive suite, watching Malcolm Thorne return his gaze to his digital screen with absolute indifference. A cold, crystal-clear awareness washed over my entire consciousness. For 11 long years, I had listened to Malcolm preach about corporate family values, mutual loyalty, and team sacrifice whenever he needed me to log 80-hour work weeks during market volatility. But the precise moment my real family suffered a tragic loss, his polished executive mask fell away to reveal a heartless predator. He did not view me as a valued senior partner. He viewed me as a disposable tool to be squeezed for profit until broken. "I am catching my flight to Oregon today, Malcolm," I said quietly, looking at him with steady, unwavering focus. "Then you are voluntarily forfeiting your equity shares, your senior managing director position, and your entire 11-year career at this institution." Malcolm snapped, his voice dropping into a harsh threat. "Make your choice right now, Gerald." The Singapore delegation arrives in less than 2 hours. I turned around without saying another word and walked out of his office. As I passed through the glass doors into the main strategy department, my longtime colleague Chloe Bennett caught my eye. Chloe was 36 years old, a remarkably talented senior marketing director who had repeatedly suffered under Malcolm's arrogant micromanagement. She instantly recognized the white-hot intensity behind my calm exterior and motioned for me to step into an empty soundproof conference room, locking the door behind us. "Gerald, what on earth just happened in Malcolm's office?" Chloe asked in a hushed whisper, her eyes wide with worry. "My mother passed away less than an hour ago," I told her, the raw truth hanging heavily between us. "And Malcolm just gave me an ultimatum. If I leave to attend her funeral, instead of presenting the $4,500,000 deal to Hiram Lin, he will terminate my employment on the spot." Chloe gasped aloud, pressing her hand against her chest in utter disbelief. "That is utterly monstrous. That has to violate every basic employment standard in federal labor law. Is he completely insane?" "It does not matter if he is insane," I said, my voice hardening as a powerful strategic plan began to formulate in my mind. "Malcolm believes he possesses total leverage because he controls the corporate checkbook and holds the CEO title. What he completely forgets is that he does not legally own the quantitative algorithm driving this entire $4,500,000 acquisition. What do you mean by that? Chloe asked, stepping closer with intense curiosity. 5 years ago, long before Vanguard Apex Financial even conceived of expanding into Asian manufacturing markets, I independently engineered and coded a revolutionary risk mitigation software platform called Apex Shield. I explained in detail. I created it entirely on my personal hardware, during my off-duty hours, using my own private resources. I personally registered the full statutory copyright under Title 17 of the United States Code, Section 106, specifically Title 17, Section 106 of the United States Code, which explicitly grants sole exclusive rights to the creator. Malcolm attempted to quietly bundle Apex Shield into our company's pitch deck without securing a formal written licensing agreement from me. In doing so, he committed a direct breach of corporate fiduciary duty by fraudulently representing personal property as firm assets. Chloe looked at me with immense admiration as the legal magnitude of the situation registered. So Malcolm is attempting to sell a multi-million-dollar technology asset that he has zero legal rights to convey? Exactly, I nodded firmly. And there is a far worse element to his strategy. The aggressive automated restructuring plan that Bradley Owens drafted behind my back involves terminating 500 overseas manufacturing workers without providing the mandatory statutory notice required under Title 29 of the United States Code, Section 2101, commonly known as the Warren Act under Title 29, Section 2101 of the United States Code. Malcolm intends to conceal those massive pending severance liabilities from Hiram Lin to artificially inflate short-term projected profits by 24%. That constitutes deliberate corporate fraud and active asset dissipation, Chloe declared, her voice filled with moral indignation. My mother spent 35 years of her life working as a tireless community organizer, defending vulnerable working families, I said gently. Feeling her memory ignite a quiet fire within me, she raised me to believe that every number written on a financial sheet represents real human lives, families, and futures. I refused to allow Malcolm Thorne to butcher 500 livelihoods while using my mother's death to blackmail me into compliance. I am going to do both, Chloe. I am going to bury my mother with the deep honor she earned, and I am going to execute this international deal on my own ethical terms. Tell me exactly what you need me to do, Gerald, Chloe said without a moment of hesitation. I am standing with you all the way. First, I need you to go to my desk and retrieve the encrypted blue flash drive containing the true unedited Apex Shield data files, I instructed. Second, we are going to ensure that Malcolm Thorne is completely out of position when Hiram Lin arrives. 10 minutes later, I walked over to the desk of Bradley Owens, the ambitious junior manager who had eagerly assisted Malcolm in removing worker protections from the acquisition model. Bradley was 32, wearing an expensive tailored suit and exuding misplaced confidence. Bradley, Malcolm requested that I inform you that the meeting location has been officially moved to the Holden Executive Center across town, I said with smooth, unshakable authority. Building maintenance is performing an unexpected emergency test on the main boardroom fire suppression system at 11. He wants you to order an executive car right now and escort him over there immediately so he can inspect the setup. Bradley blinked, visibly startled by the news. Why didn't Malcolm mention this to me 5 minutes ago? He is currently negotiating international wire protocols with the legal department, I replied smoothly. If Hiram Lin arrives at an empty building across town because you failed to coordinate transport, Malcolm will hold you personally responsible for ruining the deal. Terrified of incurring the CEO's wrath, Bradley immediately grabbed his coat and rushed toward the transport desk. As Malcolm Thorne stepped out of the executive elevator moments later, I casually approached him under the guise of handing him his printed briefing binder. As I handed over the folder, my hand brushed against his jacket pocket, and I expertly toggled his mobile phone's side switch into full airplane mode. By the time Malcolm realized he was being driven 6 miles through dense midtown traffic toward a locked conference room, he would be completely cut off from the main office. while Malcolm Thorne was trapped inside a Blacktown car, crawling through gridlocked Manhattan traffic. Toward a non-existent meeting, I caught an express taxi straight to John F. Kennedy International Airport. Upon arrival, I reserved a private executive workstation inside an airport terminal lounge, unpacked my laptop, and connected to our firm's high-speed satellite network. It was precisely 10 minutes before 1 in the afternoon. My cross-country flight to Oregon was scheduled to commence boarding at 2:15, providing me with a precise 45-minute window to deliver the most critical presentation of my career. At exactly 1 in the afternoon, the encrypted satellite video conference portal initialized. Across the crisp digital display, the grand glass boardroom of Vanguard Apex Financial materialized. Seated at the center of the conference table was Hiram Lin, the 78-year-old founder of Lin Holdings, flanked by his daughter May Lin and a team of senior corporate solicitors. Positioned at the far end of the room was Chloe Bennett, who subtly flashed me a quick thumbs-up gesture just out of view of the primary camera lens. "Good afternoon, Mr. Lin, Miss Lin, and distinguished members of the executive board," I began, keeping my posture upright and my vocal tone deep, measured, and calm. "My name is Gerald Vance, lead quantitative strategist for this transaction. I apologize for appearing before you today via a satellite video connection. I was unexpectedly called away on a solemn personal obligation regarding the passing of my beloved mother earlier this morning." Hiram Lin, a distinguished gentleman possessing silver hair and piercing eyes, leaned forward attentively, his stern facial features immediately softening into genuine warmth. "Mr. Vance, please accept my heartfelt condolences. In our family heritage, honoring one's parents and fulfilling filial responsibilities is the highest moral priority. We are deeply honored that you would take the time to speak with us during your hour of personal grief." "Where is Mr. Thorne?" "Mr. Thorne was unexpectedly delayed across town due to an administrative scheduling oversight," I replied smoothly. "However, as the sole creator and registered copyright holder of the proprietary Apex Shield valuation algorithm under Title 17 of the United States Code, Section 106, specifically Title 17, Section 106 of the United States Code, I hold the exclusive legal authority to negotiate and license this software infrastructure today." Hiram Lin raised his eyebrows in pleasant surprise, glancing over at his chief legal counsel, who immediately began reviewing the statutory copyright verification documents I had transmitted to their encrypted portal. "What I am about to present to you today," I continued, bringing up my modified financial architecture on their main display screen, "is a sustainable valuation model that differs dramatically from the regressive automated blueprint SON, previously drafted by former management. The automated proposal sought to eliminate 500 skilled manufacturing workers in Southeast Asia to create an artificial 24% surge in short-term quarterly profit metrics. However, that proposal entirely overlooked the severe financial and legal liabilities triggered under Title 29 of the United States Code, Section 2101. Commonly known as the Warren Act under Title 29, Section 2101 of the United States Code, which mandates strict advance notice and substantial severance compensations for mass workforce terminations. I paused intentionally, allowing the profound legal implications of my analysis to sink into the minds of the corporate attorneys seated around the table. My alternative framework, I explained with clarity, preserves all 500 experienced factory positions. By integrating precision efficiency protocols and proprietary risk mitigation algorithms through Apex Shield, we achieve a consistent, long-term operational yield of 28%. 4 full percentage points higher than the automated plan, while completely shielding Lin Holdings from labor strikes, regulatory fines, and reputational damage. May Lin, Hiram's daughter and chief operating officer, leaned forward with sharp interest. "Mr. Vance, your strategic model demonstrates brilliant foresight. But why did Mr. Thorne attempt to conceal these labor liabilities and push the automated model upon us?" "Because short-term executive greed frequently blinds corporate leadership to long-term fiduciary stability," I answered with complete honesty. "My mother devoted 35 years of her life to protecting the rights and dignity of working people. She taught me that true economic metrics must honor human value. Building corporate wealth by destroying 500 working families is not only morally bankrupt, it is fundamentally flawed business strategy. I refuse to permit my personal copyrighted algorithm to be used as an instrument of destruction against working-class communities. A profound, respectful silence settled over the entire boardroom. Hiram Lin looked thoughtfully at his daughter, exchanged a brief silent understanding with her, and then turned his gaze directly back toward the camera lens. "Mr. Vance," Hiram Lin spoke, his voice ringing with absolute authority. "My own grandfather began our family enterprise inside a tiny workshop with only 5 workers. He taught our family that any business that fails to respect its workforce will eventually crumble from its own corruption. Your remarkable moral integrity and legal genius bring immense honor to your mother's memory today. Lin Holdings will formally sign your revised acquisition model for the $4,500,000 portfolio upon one single non-negotiable condition." "Name your condition, Mr. Lin," I replied calmly. "The absolute condition is that Lin Holdings will deal exclusively with you and your designated management team," Hiram Lin declared firmly. "We will not execute any contract or transfer any funds if Mr. Malcolm Thorne or his automated framework is involved in any capacity. Now, close your laptop, catch your flight, and bury your mother with the full honor she earned. Business can wait." "Thank you from the bottom of my heart, Mr. Lin," I said, feeling a deep sense of relief wash over my soul. I disconnected the satellite stream, powered down my laptop, and took a long, deep breath. At 2:15 in the afternoon, I walked down the boarding gate and took my seat on the aircraft bound for Oregon, leaving the corporate chaos of Manhattan behind me. While my commercial flight climbed 35,000 feet into the sky heading west toward Oregon, the situation back at Vanguard Apex Financial collapsed into complete executive mayhem. Malcolm Thorne had finally realized he was sitting in an empty building 6 miles away, while his cell phone sat completely silent in airplane mode. By the time he frantically navigated his way back into the Manhattan headquarters at 3S. In the afternoon, the delegation from Singapore had already left the premises. Malcolm burst into the central boardroom, his face flushed with rage, demanding to know why the $4,500,000 acquisition contract had not been executed according to his automated plan. Chloe Bennett calmly walked over and handed him the binding agreement executed by Hiram Lin, which explicitly incorporated my revised worker protection framework and formally recognized my personal copyright ownership under Title 17 of the United States Code, Section 106. Malcolm lost all semblance of executive control. He immediately summoned Edgar Montgomery and commanded the technology department to lock down my network accounts, pack my personal desk items into paper boxes, and draft an immediate termination letter, citing gross insubordination. He even attempted to issue a fraudulent corporate press announcement asserting that Vanguard Apex Financial held full legal ownership of the Apex Shield software. However, Malcolm completely underestimated the legal web he had spun around himself. Before the sun set that evening, an emergency legal injunction prepared by my personal attorney was served directly upon Malcolm Thorne and the board of directors. The document formally detailed Malcolm's severe breach of corporate fiduciary duty, his attempted unlawful conveyance of copyrighted software under Title 17, Section 106, and his reckless exposure of the institution to massive labor law violations under Title 29 of the United States Code, Section 2101, Title 29, Section 2101 of the United States Code. When the independent board of directors discovered that Malcolm Thorne had nearly lost a $4,500,000 international portfolio due to his tyrannical conduct, and that his fraudulent actions had exposed the firm to millions of dollars in federal litigation, they convened an emergency midnight board session. Edgar Montgomery presented the complete documentary record, including Chloe Bennett's testimony regarding Malcolm's ruthless attempt to force me to abandon my mother's funeral under threat of illegal termination. The board members were utterly shocked and appalled. Not only had Malcolm demonstrated profound moral bankruptcy, but his illegal maneuvers threatened to permanently destroy the firm's reputation across international financial markets. Meanwhile, I landed safely in Oregon late Tuesday evening. For the next 3 days, I completely disconnected from the corporate world. My sister Audrey and I spent our days preparing our mother's memorial service at a peaceful seaside chapel overlooking the roaring waves of the Pacific Ocean. We decorated the altar with her favorite white peonies and arranged for classic hymns to fill the sanctuary as longtime friends and neighbors gathered to honor her memory. Standing at the wooden pulpit on Friday afternoon, I delivered the eulogy for my mother with absolute clarity and peace in my heart. I spoke about her unwavering moral compass, her 35 years of selfless community service, and her fundamental belief that every human being possesses inherent dignity. For the first time in 11 long years, I felt completely aligned with the values she had instilled in me. It was not until Saturday morning, while sitting on the sunny back porch of my mother's home, that I finally powered up my mobile phone. I was greeted by a lengthy email from Edgar Montgomery detailing the explosive developments at the Manhattan office. "Gerald," Edgar wrote, "the board of directors voted unanimously on Thursday night to terminate Malcolm Thorne immediately for cause, stripping him of all severance benefits and executive options due to gross breach of fiduciary duty and corporate fraud. He was publicly escorted from the premises by security officers. Furthermore, the board has officially authorized me to offer you the executive position of Senior Managing Vice President of Global Strategy, complete with a 40% base salary increase, a substantial equity partnership stake, and full independent authority over all international acquisition models. We need your integrity back, Gerald. The firm cannot survive without your leadership." I read Edgar's message twice, then set the phone down on the wooden table. 11 years ago, I would have viewed such a promotion as the ultimate validation of my life's work. But standing on the porch where my mother had spent her quietest evenings, watching the morning sunlight filter through the pine trees, I realized that returning to an institution built on cold corporate greed was no longer possible. My mother had given me the strength to reject their flawed terms entirely. On Monday morning, I flew back to New York City, not to accept the vice presidency, but to attend the mandatory all-hands corporate assembly held on the 38th floor of Vanguard Apex Financial. Hundreds of financial analysts, department heads, and senior managing partners filled the grand auditorium, eager to hear about the future of the institution following Malcolm Thorne's dramatic downfall. Edgar Montgomery took the stage first, officially confirming that Malcolm Thorne had been permanently removed from the firm for severe ethical and legal misconduct. He then invited me to step up to the podium, publicly reading the board's offer, appointing me as Senior Managing Vice President of Global Strategy, complete with a 40% salary increase and equity partnership. I walked up to the microphone, looking out over the auditorium filled with familiar faces, colleagues who had spent years enduring 80-hour work weeks under the constant anxiety of arbitrary corporate punishment. "I am deeply grateful to Edgar and the board of directors for this extraordinary offer," I began, my voice carrying cleanly to every corner of the room. 11 years ago, when I joined this firm, I believed that human success was measured by executive titles, corner offices, and multi-million-dollar bonuses. But last week, when my mother passed away, I was reminded of a fundamental truth that corporate ambition often erases. The numbers on a financial spreadsheet are always human lives. A quiet, intense focus settled over the entire audience as I continued. "My mother devoted 35 years of her life to defending worker dignity and moral truth," I said firmly. "I will not honor her memory by stepping into an office vacated by a tyrant simply to perpetuate the same cold corporate culture. Therefore, I must respectfully decline the position of Senior Vice President, and I hereby tender my formal resignation from Vanguard Apex Financial." Gasps of surprise echoed across the auditorium. Edgar Montgomery looked completely stunned, while Chloe Bennett smiled broadly from the front row. "However," I added, looking around the room with confidence, "I am not walking away from quantitative finance. Today, I am officially founding Vance Strategic Capital, an independent investment management firm dedicated to high-yield quantitative strategy models that protect worker retention, enforce strict statutory ethics, and honor human dignity. 2 hours later, as I was packing the final books from my desk, Chloe Bennett entered my office, holding her signed resignation letter. "I am joining your new firm today, Gerald," she said with absolute conviction. Within 48 hours, Edgar Montgomery himself decided to retire from Vanguard Apex Financial to join Vance Strategic Capital as our senior advisory chairman. My sister Audrey relocated to New York to manage our administrative operations, bringing her exceptional organizational skills and warmth to our corporate culture. When Hiram Lynn learned of my new venture, Lynn Holdings immediately transferred their $4,500,000 acquisition portfolio to Vance Strategic Capital. Furthermore, deeply impressed by our moral commitment, Hiram Lynn authorized an additional 40% capital investment, committing over $6 million to our management within our first 30 days of operation. 18 months have passed since that transformative Tuesday morning. Vance Strategic Capital has expanded from a modest 4-person office into a thriving investment consultancy, managing over $50 million in ethical portfolios. We have successfully structured 12 international corporate acquisitions across Asia and North America, protecting over 3,000 factory and technical positions without sacrificing a single fraction of investor return. Malcolm Thorne attempted to establish a competing hedge fund, but his reputation for fiduciary misconduct and legal violations under Title 17, Section 106 preceded him everywhere. Deprived of institutional backing, his firm collapsed within 6 months, leaving him buried under shareholder litigation. Every morning when I enter my new office overlooking the harbor, I pause to look at the framed photograph on my desk. It shows my mother standing in her Oregon garden, holding a beautiful bouquet of white peonies. Beside it sits a small, polished brass plaque engraved with her favorite lesson: "Never forget that behind every number is a human soul." When someone attempts to force you into an impossible choice between your moral principles and your financial survival, you never have to accept their cruel terms. You can choose to walk away, leverage the law, stand firmly upon your values, and build a future far greater than they ever imagined. I am Gerald Vance, and I never forgot.